Welcome back to another LP Gallery tutorial. This is going to be a series of videos on showing you how to create realistic textures on your objects. And by textures, I'm actually talking about PowerPoint's picture tool effects. These things right here. Now, you've probably used these to apply effects to your photographs. Watercolor effect or charcoal effect or something like that. We're going to be using the same tools you see here, but instead of applying it to a photograph, we want this thing to actually create something that looks a little more realistic. So we're going to be using these in combination with the color and correction to create more realistic looking things. So for example, we have a nice vase of sunflowers. Now I want these to look fairly realistic. So for example, the leaves here. A sunflower leaf is very crinkly. And I want to get that impression out. And there's no way to do that with vectors. But if I convert the leaf into a PNG and use a combination of picture effects, I can actually create that effect. And that applies to something like this, the seed head. The sunflower seed head should look like a mass of seeds. Now, there's no way to do this in a vector. You need to actually take it to the next level. That's where we take the vector, convert it to a PNG, and apply a nice picture effect. You'll see how that works. So virtually everything you see here except the petals. The petals we've left as vectors, but everything else here has started out as a vector, converted into a PNG, and these nice picture effects to make this look a little more realistic. So that includes the glass vase, the background. So that's what our goal is going to be. Now we're going to be using flowers as an example because flowers always have a lot of texture. So we're going to start off by creating the sunflower in the vase as you see here. Then we're going to replace all these sunflowers with different flowers. So to create the sunflower in the vase, this first project, we're going to probably do it over a series of videos, maybe 3 videos, so you get an idea how to do that. And then when we introduce the other flowers, they'll be done very quickly. You'll get the idea of how this actually takes place. So our goal here again is to create nice texture effects, making things look a little more realistic by using the PowerPoint picture tools when nothing else will do. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, let me start by saying that we're not trying to create a botanically accurate sunflower. We're creating a very generic looking sunflower. There's many varieties of sunflowers. Some have double rows of petals, some have single rows of petals. There's just a lot of petals, and we don't want to get bogged down in creating too much detail. And technically, the petals aren't even referred to as petals, but we're going to refer to them as petals because it's easier to understand. So we're going to create a very generic sunflower. We're not even going to create the exact number of petals. And if you want to do that, you could search the internet, find the number of petals, and create the exact number. So I'm going to just create a basic generic looking sunflower. Now a sunflower petal kind of looks like a double teardrop shape. Now we do have a teardrop shape here. That won't work for us. It doesn't give us a really nice double teardrop shape. What does is the heart shape. So we're going to draw a heart shape. We're going to duplicate that. We're going to flip that upside down and just overlap them like this. Line them up so the edges are smooth. If you're having trouble doing that, just move them around till it looks good. Then select both of them. Go to Format. Go to Align. Align one of the edges. So in this case, I'll align the left edge. So that looks pretty smooth. And then just check out the right edge. So if you align one of the edges first, and the other one looks good, then they're perfect. If they don't, then you have to realign them again. Okay, so let's select that. Let's go to Merge. Let's go to Union. And we have something like that. We're going to get rid of the outline. We don't need it. And I'm going to stretch this long. Sunflower petal is fairly long, so we're going to stretch it kind of long like that. And that kind of looks like a sunflower petal. Okay, I'm going to just make it a little bit smaller like that. Okay, so a sunflower petal is actually fairly long. You can even actually stretch it even longer if you want. It's a fairly long petal. Okay, now we got to apply our colors to this. So we want to go from an orange to a yellow. We're not going to go from a darker yellow to a lighter yellow because if you make a yellow darker, it tends to look a little more muddy. Okay, now before we do that, I think I'd like to have my rotation handle to the top. Whenever possible, I like to keep my rotation handles to the top. So we're going to just spin it around. Okay, so let's go to our gradient. You get your default gradient here. We only need 2 stops. Let's go to these 2. Okay, so the dark one's right here. I'm going to click there. I'm going to add a nice orange. I'm going to click that one. That's going to be our light one. I'm going to add a nice yellow. So we got orange to yellow. So again, this is why we're not going to two yellows, because to make one yellow darker, we'd have to change the brightness, and that's going to kind of muddy it up. So we're going to go from an orange to a yellow. Now, before we continue, I just want to show you this. Creating something on a white background and then creating something on a colored background are two different things. So I'm going to show you that. So a copy of this and drag it to the colored background. Let's compare the colors. So you can see that this looks darker on the white background. When you look at this one, it looks lighter on the dark background. So just keep that in mind, that although we're creating things on a white background, when they go on a colored background, they're going to lighten up a bit. Now you might ask, why don't you just do it on the dark background? The problem is this: the dark background is just a rectangle with a texture applied to it. If we work on top of a rectangle like this, then we're always having trouble selecting different things. We end up selecting the rectangle and moving it and doing all kinds of things like that. So we're going to do it in the white one and just transfer it to a background. Okay, so let's get rid of that. And we have this nice petal. I think I'm going to just stretch it a little bit longer because it is a fairly long petal. Okay, so it looks pretty good. I think what I'm going to do with the orange is darken the orange a bit. So I'm going to click on my orange. I'm going to spin this down about a -10. Just make it a teeny bit darker. And I think for my yellow, because this is too bright, it's too fluorescent yellow, I'm going to take that one and I'm going to spin that one up, or type 50. I want to go 50, so I think I'll just type it. It's faster than spinning. So we have the yellow toned down a bit, and we have the orange a little bit darker. So that looks pretty good. So I'm happy with that. Now, a sunflower petal has some curling edges. Like most petals, the edges tend to curl over a bit. So we want to create some nice curling edges here. And a sunflower petal has many creases or folds in the middle, and we want to indicate those. So we have to get a couple of shapes to do that. Now, I think before I do that, I think what I'd like to do is add a little more stronger yellow here. So I'm going to take this yellow stop, and I'm going to drag it more towards the middle, but right here. I'm about 30% there, 31%. I want a stronger yellow at the top. You'll see why a little bit later on why we're doing this. So we're going to just move the yellow stop a little bit up like this. Okay, perfect. So now we have to get our shapes that are going to look like a nice curling over of the petal. So what shapes do we need? So I'm going to use two of my favorite shapes. I'm going to use my wave shape, and I'm going to use my double wave shape. Okay. Now we're going to take this shape handle, drag it down, take this shape handle, drag it to the left. That's what we want. We want that shape. And then we'll just thin it out like this. And I'm going to just rotate it. Okay, we have that one. Let's do the same thing here. Let's drag that down. Let's drag that to the left. And let's thin this down. And let's rotate that. Okay, perfect. Okay, now I want both of these to have this color. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to double click on my format painter so it stays turned on. And I'm going to click here and click there. I'll turn my format painter off, and we have this. Okay, the next thing is this. All I want is really the dark color. I don't want this yellow. So I want to create a shadow, so I only need the orange, not the yellow. Now, if you followed our videos before, you know that when you're creating transparent stops and a gradient, they're not always totally transparent. And I'm going to show you with this one. So I'm going to take this yellow, I'm going to make it totally transparent. Now on the white, it looks totally transparent. It looks like it's totally gone. You put on the dark, and you can see that it's not really transparent. It's kind of muddy, and that's because the yellow still influences that. So how do you do this? Well, if you're using a two-color stop like we are, what you have to do is have both colors to be the same, or as close to being the same. So I'm going to click here to get another color very close to that. I'm going to remove my yellow, drag it down, and I'm going to take this one, drag it over. I'm going to make that one transparent. So I'm going to make that transparent. And now when we put it here, you see it's true transparent. It goes transparent to the orange. And that's exactly what we need. Okay, so I'm going to take the transparency. I'm going to just flatten this out a bit like that. That looks pretty good. Now I want that one for over here. So I'm going to just use my format painter and apply it to that. And we have that. Maybe I'll just widen that out a bit. And we have this. Okay, so we can stretch these out a bit. Okay, now, here's how this is going to work. You see where we have these points? We want those points to always be pointing down, not up. Okay, so I'm going to rotate these. I could also flip them. So I'm going to rotate them so the points are down. The next thing is where the rounded part is. Here we have round, here we have it flat. The rounded part always goes to the edges, okay? The flat part goes to the inside. Okay, so let's take this one for example. I'm going to make a duplicate of that, and I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to put it right here. Okay, so you can see what that looks like. It looks like a curling edge of the petal. And you can straighten it out. You can do it many different ways. Okay, now I'm going to take this. I'm going to drag it straight down like this. Okay, so we have something that looks kind of like that. Okay, and again, I'm going to just rotate it big. I'm going to make sure it gets right to the top here. And I have a little sliver here showing through. That looks pretty good. Now, what are we going to do about this part? Okay, we're going to snip this part off. Now, a very good shape to use to snip is this shape right here. It's called a freeform shape. If you've never used it, it's very simple. So I'm going to click it. Here's how the freeform shape tool works. You click to start a point, and then you just move your mouse. It creates a straight line. And every time you want to change the angle of the line, you just click. So I'm going to click, change the angle. Click, 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 click. So every time you click, you get to change the angle of the line. And then you go back to the beginning where it joins. It becomes solid color, and you join the shape together. So we're going to delete that, and that's what we're going to do. So let's go to our freeform shape. I'm going to just go right up here to the edge of the petal. Click, click, click. The shape doesn't matter what it looks like, as long as it encompasses the part you want to cut off. Okay, so I'm going to take this. We want to keep that. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to go to Format, Merge Shape. I'm going to subtract, and we have that. So there you have it, quite nice. And we snipped up that end, and we have a slightly folding petal. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to duplicate it. I am duplicating for a reason. You'll see that in a minute. And again, we need the round part to be to the outside. So we're going to go to Rotate. We're going to say Flip Horizontal, so the round parts are to the outside, like that. And then I'm going to rotate this and put it to the edge, maybe there. And you can see what we have. We have another folded edge. And I can just see how do I can stretch it out as much as I basically want. And let's see, something like that looks pretty good. So we have double folding edge. And I try to get these little parts in here where it looks like that you can still see the outside of the petal. So I'm still trying to retain that if possible. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, so now I'm going to snip this little part right here off. So I'm going to go to my freeform shape, go to the edge of the petal, click, click, click. Okay, select that shape and click on this one, Format, Merge, and Subtract. Okay, and that's gone. Now I might want to make these folds maybe a little darker. So I'm going to take this and maybe just drag it in a bit so it's a little bit darker, and I might do the same for that. That looks pretty good. Now the next thing is this. I'm actually going to be using these orange colors that we created for something else. Now I would like to add that to our colors right here, to our recent colors. Now when you mix your colors in a gradient, they never get added. And I want to use that color. So what I got to do is add that to my recent colors. Now to do that, this is all you have to do. You click on the gradient, you go to the stop that you want, and I want that stop. I'm going to go here, I'm going to go to more colors, and all I have to do is look at it. That's it. Say okay, and then when I do that, it gets added to the stop. Okay, and just in case I want to use the light yellow, this one here, I'm going to go here, more colors, and I'm going to add that one to my stop. Okay, so now we're going to have those colors added to the stop. Now we're going to create our folds. Now we're going to use this. We're not going to use this, but we're going to use actually the single wave here. And I'm going to just flatten it out like this. And I'm going to put it here. Now what I'm going to do with this one is I want to actually make it lighter. So I'm going to spin this up a +5, kind of like that. Okay, so I want it to be a little bit lighter. I want the folds to really show through pretty nice. They're going to be a lighter color, and we get something that looks like that. And that's kind of what the folds look like. Okay, so we have a nice fold there. I think I might even spin that up even more, maybe about a 10. So it's a little bit lighter. Perfect. Okay, so now all we have to do is, of course, duplicate these. So I'm going to make another one. And you don't want them to be even because they're not even. So I might take that, flip it vertically so it's not so not exactly going in the same angle, and take that one and make another one. And make sure they don't go off the petal. Take this one, maybe flip that one around, and go rotate, flip horizontally. Okay, so we want these folds in there, but we don't want them so obvious that they're a repeated pattern. So that's all we're doing. Okay, so we got something that looks like that. Maybe we'll take that fold, just drag it down, make another one there, make sure it doesn't go off. So you want to make sure the folds don't go off, and you have something that kind of looks like that. So that's basically what we're doing here. Okay, so I'm going to take this, select this, and I'm going to make a duplicate, and I'm going to group the duplicate, and I'm going to just move it over here. Okay, so the next thing to do is to create 5 more petals. We're only going to have 6 in total, and again, that's not the exact number that a sunflower has, but that's close enough. We don't want to get bogged down in creating massive petals. So all we really need to do is just change these curved folded areas here. So where they fold over, we have a double fold, we have a single fold. We just have to flip them, have them going up, down, and that kind of stuff. And then we change the folds here. We have to move these around. So again, we don't see that obvious repeated pattern. Okay, so we got one there. Let's do this one. So I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to move that one there, take that one there, and I'm going to go format. I'm going to flip horizontal. Remember, the round parts has to be to the edge. Maybe I'll put that one like this. And maybe I'll take that one. I'm going to, again, rotate, flip horizontal. Maybe I'll put this one to the bottom. So it kind of goes more like this. Okay, so there we have a second petal. Now we got to do something about these folds. Again, we can move them around, flip them around. Again, we don't want them to be exactly the same, or they're going to look obvious. Okay, so we got that petal. So that's petal number 2. So that's basically what we're doing. Okay, so that's 2 of them. I'm going to select this. I'm going to just drag that over there and group that. Okay, so now I have to create 4 more. So again, I'm going to just speed this up, but you get the idea of what we're doing. So we're doing these curved edges here, the fold over edges. We have a double, we have a single wave, and we just have to move them around, up, down, left, right, flipping around, and take the folds and then do something with the folds. Again, you want to move them around, flip them around, so they're not obviously quite the same. Okay, now you might say, why don't we just take these and just flip them horizontally, and then you have a duplicate? Well, we don't want it to be so obvious that we're doing that. As it is, we're going to be creating 6 petals only, and then we're going to be creating the rest of the sunflower with the 6 petals. We don't want that repeating pattern to be obvious. That's why I'm not actually just flipping these. Okay, so I'm going to speed this up, and you'll get the idea of what we're doing. Okay, so there's our 6 petals. I notice in this one here I'm missing something, so I'm going to take this one. I'm going to just drag it over here. I'm going to rotate, flip horizontally, and put that there. Rotate it, and I'm going to rotate it, and something like that looks pretty good. Okay, now I've got to, of course, select this one again. Make sure they're all grouped together. And they're all grouped. Okay, so we can get rid of these. We don't need these. And again, if you want to create the exact number of petals, you know how to do that. You just keep adding this, changing the double and the single wave, left, right, top, bottom, change the folds in here, and you can add as many petals as you want. Okay, now I'm going to take all of these, I'm going to group them, and I'm going to make them much smaller. Okay, so closer to the size of what we actually need. Okay, now I'm going to zoom in a little closer. You can see what we're going to do next. Okay, so let me get a little closer, and actually I'll make them just a little bit bigger. Just a little bit bigger for what we want next. We have one more thing to add, so I'm going to make them just a shade bit bigger than we really need. Okay, so I'm going to now ungroup these. And here's the last little bit we're going to add. Now what we're going to add is what's called an inner shadow to the petals. Okay, now I'll just show you why. If I put this petal here, it's fairly light. You can see that it's very flat here. So colors look flat, they don't look three-dimensional. So I'm going to show you what we're going to do. Okay, so these are grouped, and what I want is the actual petal shape. I don't want the folds, or I don't want any of these curves here. Okay, the edges here. I just want the petal shape itself. So you're going to have to click, and there's your petal shape. Now if you're having trouble doing that, then just click on it, use your tab key. Okay, so there it is, I got my petal shape. If I keep tabbing, I can see that I'm selecting different things. Okay, I want the petal shape itself, so I'm going to click on it, hit the tab, and I can see right here that I've got the petal shape. Okay, so we're going to add an inner shadow. Now if you've never tried an inner shadow, let me just show you how that works. Let me just take this, let me just remove the outline, and let me just do a typical drop shadow. Most people know about drop shadow. So here's a drop shadow. Shadow goes to the bottom. What does an inner shadow do? Well, if you click on inner shadow, the shadow goes on the inside of the object, not on the outside. So it's a great way to create something that looks like it's embossed or incised. So if you look at this, this looks like it's cut right into the paper. So that's what an inner shadow does. Now it's a typical inner shadow, but we're going to use it a little differently. What I want the inner shadow to do is I want the inner shadow to help form the curve of the petal, to make it look a little more rounded. Okay, so I'm going to show you how that works here. So I'm going to click on this, use my tab key, make sure I get the petal, and I'm going to go right here to my shadow, and I want an inner shadow. Now the shape panel is at the top, which is perfect. This is why I want my shape panels at the top. I want my shadow to be at the bottom. So you can see this is the inner shadow bottom. I click that, and I get this dark color. Now you're going to know why I saved some of these dark orange colors. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to get to use our dark orange color. And we have that. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I can rotate this. So you can see what that does. I'm rotating around. It just puts a little hint of a shadow. Do you see that? As I rotate it around to find the best spot. So I'm going to rotate it. And I'd play with it till I figure out where I kind of want it. So I kind of like that. And then the distance, if I use the distance, I can make the shadow a little more deeper. So it gives it a little more rounded effect. Do you see that? If I flatten it out, it's a little flatter. If I move more distance, I get a little more of a rounded effect. Now we don't want to muddy it up, so you don't want to be too dark. Now the transparency, I can make it lighter or I can make it much darker. So obviously you don't want it too dark. And we just kind of play around with it. Okay, now I'm going to show you the difference. I'm going to take this one, I'm going to duplicate it, and what I'll do with this one is I'll remove the shadow, take no shadow, and now we'll put both of these on the dark background. Okay, now it looks very dark here. On the darker background, you can see it's different. So now when you do a comparison, here we got a very nice thin shadow that helps with the roundness of it. This pair is a much brighter, so it does get the feeling of round. Shadow to the edge, brightness in the middle. Now this is also why I made that yellow stop and I dragged it down so it's brighter at the top. So on you we're going to be adding an inner shadow, and that's going to darken it a bit, so I wanted it brighter at the top. Okay, so if you compare it to this one is kind of flat now. See, with all that a solid yellow here, it kind of flattens the object out. Well, here it looks a little more three-dimensional. So that's kind of what we're going for. Okay, let's go to that one. And let's do it again. So you might say, why didn't you do that when you were creating this? Well, because they were very big when you were creating them, and the shadows stay at that size. So if we would have created the shadow at the larger size, shrunk them, the shadows would stay very big, and then you'd have to reduce the size, which is just twice the work. So it's easier to do it at the size you need it. Okay, so I'm going to click on this one, do my tab key, go to my shadow. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to the bottom shadow, and I want this color stop, and I'm going to just spin that around, kind of like the same way. And decide what you basically do is decide which way you want the shadow to go. That looks pretty good to me. I can increase it if I want, or take it down if I want. I can make it lighter or darker, and I think that looks pretty good. Now, I'm going to do that to all of them. And there we have nice petals with nice inner shadows that really helps form the volume of the petal or the roundness of the petal. Now if I take these and I just put them here, you're going to see that they look a little more natural, a little more realistic. And that's what we're going for. So the next goal, of course, is to now take these 6 petals and duplicate them and have them going around a circle so we have a nice circular arrangement of petals. Now, just before we create a circle of petals, I just want to show you one more thing about the inner shadow that actually works in our favor. I'm going to take this one here, and I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to rotate it. Now, I want you to notice that the shadow is on the left side here. Now, watch what happens when I rotate it. The shadow kind of shifts. Do you see that? It's not shadowed here, it's actually moving around. And that's actually going to be to our benefit because we're going to create a nice circle of petals going around like this. And in real life, those shadows would be shifting. So that is something that actually works in our benefit. That's kind of a unique property of the inner shadow. So you're going to see how that works when you put this all together. So that will help remove any of this repeated pattern because the shadows are constantly shifting. Okay, let me get rid of that. And let's do our circle of petals. Now we need a nice shape. So which shape am I going to use? I'm actually going to use the ring shape. I'm going to hold my shift key down and get a nice circle like that. I'm going to take the inner ring and just bring it back out like this. Remove the fill. And that's kind of what I want. I just find when I'm doing something like a pattern like this where the petals are supposed to go around, I found the ring to be better than just a circle. So we're going to line the petals on the inner ring here. So I'm going to take this, send it to the back. Okay, and now all we have to do is line up our petals. So I'm going to take this one, put it here. And for the rest, we're going to rotate them by 15 degrees. So they'll be nice, evenly rotated 15 degrees right around. Okay, and of course, we only need to create one quadrant. So we're going to just create one quadrant, group it, and duplicate it around. Okay, let's take this one. Let's go to our size and property, go to size. We're going to rotate that by 15. And line that up on the inner ring. Take that one, rotate that one by 30. If you're wondering how big the circle is, well, the circle is going to be adjustable. All I need to do is create one quadrant, okay? So if the circle is too big, I'll make the circle smaller. If the circle is too small and I have too many petals, I'll make the circle bigger. So that's how I'm working it. So I'm just going to do one quadrant and I'll adjust the circle to match what I have. Okay, so let's see how close they are to filling that quadrant. I'm going to click here, and that's pretty close. I have a little bit of space here. I don't think I'm going to worry about it too much. Now I'm going to group these, and then I'm going to rotate them and just have them fill in the circle here. Now, if there's any gaps, then of course I'll make the circle smaller. If the circle is too small and I can't fit them all in, I'll make it bigger. That's all I have to do. Okay, so let me select all these. Let's group them. And let's duplicate them and just rotate them. There it is. Now again, if you want to create the exact number of petals, you can search for the number of petals and just create that many. Just make them into a group and just rotate them and then adjust your circle to match. Okay, so we got that. I don't know if you noticed, but the shadows are shifting, and that is a really nice feature. That is a really super feature. That looks pretty good. Go ahead and put it like that. And for the last one. Okay, so you can see that I have a little bit of a gap here. That's not a problem. So I just take the inner circle, just make it a little bit smaller, and just bring everything in. So that's all we're really doing. Just bring everything in, and if I need to, I'll adjust it even more. So the circle is pliable, so you adjust it to the group of petals that you have. So we'll just move this around, and I think it looks pretty good. So we're trying to keep them to the inner ring as much as possible, and just move these around so they kind of fit. And I think that looks pretty good. Let's bring them in, and I think that is good enough. Okay, I'm going to take this. We're going to actually use this for something else. I'm going to pull that out. And of course, what we have to do is group this. So I'm going to take all that. Okay, make sure you got the 4 squares here. You can see the selection handles. Make sure you got 4 of them, and group them. Okay, now this is going to be our seed pod. So I'm going to bring that to the front. And I don't want a double ring. I actually just want a nice little circle. So I'm going to go to my format. I'm going to edit the shape, change the shape, and just put it back to a circle. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, so now we're going to give this a nice brown radial fill. So I want a dark brown to the center, radiating out to a lighter brown to the edges. Okay, so we're going to go to our fill. We're going to go to our gradient. Only need 2 stops. Let's go to those 2 stops. I want to change the type to radial, and I want to center radial. So go to this one, center. So it's centered in the middle. So that one you can see is the center. So that one's going to be the dark brown. I'm going to go here, more colors, standard, just a nice dark brown. That's it. I'm going to take this one, going to go to my colors, more colors, going to go to standard and just take a lighter brown, something like that. Say okay, and I have that. Don't need the line, so we're going to say no line. Good. Now I'm going to just bring the dark brown up a bit so it's a little stronger, so it's more dominant. And I think I'm going to make that a little bit darker, so I'm going to spin the brightness down a bit. So it's a little bit darker. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to make it just a little bit larger. I'm going to stretch it out, kind of like that. Okay, it looks pretty good to me. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and paste it as a PNG. So now we're going to start using the picture effects to create these nice textures that we really need. Okay, so I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it as a PNG. Okay, and I think what I'm going to do, because PowerPoint always pastes to the center all the time when you do that, I'll just take all this and just kind of move it down a bit so that we're more down to the center anyway, so we're not always constantly moving. Okay, good. So let's take this and let's try our nice PNG effect. We can use the format picture box, or we can use the menu up here, and there is a difference. So if I were to go to artistic effect here, I could choose the one I want. Now what I often like to do is run my mouse on these to see the effects, to see which one I'd like. So you don't actually see that here, okay? You just pick the one you want. Now if you actually want to see the effect, you have to go to the picture tools, format, and then you run your mouse on these will show you the effects. Okay, now the one I really want is one called mosaic bubbles. It's this one right here. Okay, that is a good effect for what we need. So I'm going to click that. There's your mosaic bubbles. Now if we take a look, you're going to say, well, those are pretty small. They don't look like this. This is nice and large. You can see the individual little seeds. This doesn't look like that. And that's because some of the effects in the picture tools, when you do this kind of stuff, is scale dependent. That means if the object is small, the scale effect is small. If the object is larger, the scale effect makes it bigger. So I'm going to show you what I mean with this. So you can see that it's small. It's not going to work the way we want it. I'm going to just move that to the side. I'm going to take this. I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to stretch it out like this. I'm going to copy that. Copy that. I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to go again, paste special, PNG, and we have that. Okay, so now I'll just do this one. I'll just apply the mosaic bubbles. I'll do it through here. And mosaic bubbles with that one, we apply it, and you can see that. Okay, so now if we make a comparison, they're very different. So mosaic bubbles is definitely one of those picture effects that scales to the object. Okay, we don't want that. Let's get rid of that one. And let's work with this. One of the things I want to do is I want more of these little green specks in here. I don't want it to be so smooth, kind of like what you see here. This looks a little more realistic because you can see there's like little elements or little particles on top of the seed head kind of stuck on there. And that's what we're trying to do. We want to get the idea that something's kind of stuck on the seed head, like the little petal parts or leaf pieces behind, things of that nature. I'm going to go here where it says pressure. You can see we have the option pressure, and I'm actually going to take it back like this. So that's what I actually want. So it's going to lighten it up, but it's going to give us a lot more of these effects. I really like that. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our format. We're going to go to our color, and we're going to apply a little more warmer tone. So it makes it more to like the orange or the red kind of tone. So it makes it a little bit warmer, which looks pretty good. And then we're going to go back and we're going to go to our corrections. And now we're going to add a little bit of darkness. And this is where you get to play around. So you kind of move around and see what you want. Okay. So that one's, let's see. No, I think I'd like to go a little bit darker. So I might go over here. Or I might try that one. So this is what we're doing. I think I kind of like that one. That one looks pretty good. So I think I'll take that one. I like that. Nice dark seed head. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sharpen this. So I want these little speckles in here to really stand out. So I'm going to go back. So I'm going to go back to my format, corrections, and I want the sharpen. Here's your sharpen. I'm going to go right to the top, maximum sharpen. And when I do that, I get that. And that is perfect. So you can see we got the nice little seeds there, and we got all these little imperfections here, these little pieces that are kind of hanging on it. It's going to make it look a little more natural like this. Okay, now we got to take that and we got to get it into here. So how do we do that? Okay, well, if you've probably done this before, you probably copied a picture and put it into a shape. Well, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to copy this and we're going to paste it into this little circle. Now, I'm actually going to keep that aside, keep a copy aside. We might need it for something else. So I'm going to copy this, click here, go to my fill, go to my picture and texture effects, give it a click, and you get the default. Tell it to go from clipboard because that's where we copied it, and you get that. Now, you're going to say, well, that's the same as the other one. We can't see the individual seeds. They're too small. And that's how it works. When you paste something like this, a picture, into a shape, PowerPoint tries to squeeze it as much as it can into the shape. And that's not what we want. I want it to be the size of this. So we have to change our options. So right here, you see where it says tile? If you check that, you're telling it to keep it at the size it is. So I'm going to check that. And now we keep it at the size that it is. Now you say, that looks kind of awkward. And this is how it works. This coordinate here is this coordinate right here. Okay? So when you paste it into the shape, it starts with the top left. Now, obviously, the top left is not going to work. We want the center part. So now we have to tell that. And we do it right here where it says alignment. So right now it says top left, and that's what you got, just the top left. So we go here and we say center. And now you have a center, and there it is. Now what I'd like to do is move this a bit. I want some of the light areas along with the dark areas, okay? So we have X and Y offsets. Y moves up or down, X moves left and right. So that means it actually moves this thing in the shape. So I'm going to spin the X up, and you can see what's going to happen. It's going to move. So what I want is some light areas and then some dark areas, and they're like just like that. Okay, so you can see what's happening. I don't want to go too far or we'll see the edges. So we have some light areas and we have some dark areas. So it makes it look a little more realistic, like we have a light area and a shadow area. Okay, so that's what we're kind of going for. So that's why I went from a dark brown to light brown. Okay, now we shift that over and that looks pretty good. Okay, so we don't need this big one anymore, so let's get rid of that one. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create this kind of like little stamen effect that you see right around the seed head, these tiny little points that stick out. So we want to create something that looks like that. So I'm going to take this circle, just duplicate it, and I'm going to change its shape, go to Format, Edit Shape, and I'm going to change it to the 32 star shape. And this is kind of what we want. I'm going to take the shape handle down so we have points like that. And what I want is the points to be just barely sticking out of the edges. So I'm going to stretch this out bigger. And we want it something kind of like that. Oh, let's make it a little smaller. It's a little too big. So we want something just like this. These little points just sticking out just kind of like this. And what we're going to do is duplicate the star and merge them into one shape. So we have this solid fill of these tiny little points. Okay, so I'm going to just, I'm going to duplicate this one, put it over here. Okay, now I'm going to take another one. Okay, I'm going to line them up. align, center, align, middle. I'm going to take the top one and I'm going to just rotate it a bit, kind of like that. Now you can do it more precisely by going here, and I think I might take it down to like a 2. So just a slight rotation. Okay, now I'm going to take that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge the shape. Let's go to Union, and then I'm going to duplicate this one, and again I'm going to line them up. So go to line, center, align, middle, and take the top one and just rotate it. Just kind of do it manually, kind of like that. That looks pretty good. I'm going to select that. Going to go to merge, go to Union, and then I'm going to duplicate that, and then again select both shapes, go to format. I want to go to line, center, align, middle, and then I'm going to just rotate that one a little bit, kind of like that. That looks pretty good, and you kind of get the idea what I'm doing here. So I'm going to go to merge, Union, and I'm going to take that one, duplicate that, align it up, line, center, line, middle, take that one and just rotate it, and now we should be able to fill in the gaps, and that's exactly what I want. Something that looks like that, fairly even like that. Perfect. Now we're going to select that, and we're going to go to merge and do the Union. Okay, perfect. Now this one we don't need, we'll just move it off, and we're going to put this one here. I'm going to take this, the seed head, bring it to the front. Okay, and this is going to go behind it, just like this, and that's exactly what I want. So you got these tiny little points kind of sticking out at the edge like that. That's perfect. Now this one we're actually going to still use, and what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to take the shape handle and bring it up a bit like this, and what we're going to do is put a shadow behind this, and we're going to use this as a shadow because of the points. So these points will kind of look like they're trailing the folds of the actual petals. We'll take this one here, and let's make that, we'll take the light brown, let's make that transparent, and we can take this one back like this. I'm going to bring the light one in like this. Okay, and I want this to go behind all this stuff. Okay, so I'm going to take this, and I'll take my petals, I'll just send them to the back, send to back. Okay, it just makes it easier to do it that way. And then I'm going to take this, and you can see what we have here. Okay, now obviously I have to make that a little bit bigger. And you can see what we're getting these little soft shadows here. Maybe I'll make them a little bit stronger. And you still have your shape handle, so you can kind of move it like that. So I might take it up. These little points have a tendency to look a little bit like they're folding over the petals. That's what I'm trying to go. The petals are supposed to be three-dimensional, so I want them to look like they're kind of folding over the petals. So we have something like that. That looks pretty good. But I'm going to add one more little thing to this. I'm going to go right here to my effects. I'm going to go to a soft edge. Okay, because obviously these are a little too strong. And I'm going to go here and try, let's say, 1 point. And that smooths it out. Now let's try maybe a 2 point. Oh, okay, now that looks very soft. So you can see how the points of the star kind of really go around the petal shapes, and it really helps define the roundness of the petal. And again, you can stretch this out, you can bring it back in. It's, it's up to you. Okay, so you want to kind of keep it. You can actually move it to one side like this. You don't have to have it set perfectly centered, because again, depending on how the sun is hitting this or the light is hitting it, the shadow could be more to one side. So it doesn't have to be perfectly centered. But anyways, so you have that. So that looks pretty good. We have a nice drop shadow. Now the final thing we have to do here is we have to put a center part. The seeds start developing from the edge and towards the center. So we want a little opening here. So to do that, I'm going to just grab a nice little cloud shape like this. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy that. I'm going to put it actually in here. So I'm going to go to picture. There we got picture text fill. We got that. Looks pretty good. And I'm going to make these a little bit smaller. Okay, so they should be smaller because the seeds are more developed on the edges as they come to the center. So let's take the scale, X and Y. Let's take this down. Maybe let's try 75. Try 75. Looks a little smaller. Obviously, we do not need the outline. Let's go to the outline. Okay, so we have this nice little center part. Looks pretty good. And what I'm going to do is go to my picture tools, go to format. I'm going to go to I think corrections, and I might lighten it up a bit. So try that. That looks a little better. So it's a little bit lighter. And the reason I used the cloud shape, because I don't want it to be a perfect circle, because it wouldn't naturally be a perfect circle. It'd be kind of rough around the edges, and that's what I have here. Now I can make that smaller. And for the final thing we're going to do here is we're going to put an inner shadow on it. And when in the inner shadow, I'll give it an edge. So I'm going to go back up here to my effects. I'm going to go to shadow, and I'm going to go to an inner shadow. It doesn't really matter which one. I can go to the center, or I can just go to one of the edges. I'll just take one of the edges, and we have that. So you can see it just by doing that, we have what appears to be a raised area. So this obviously looks like it's raised, and this is indented towards the center. That's exactly what we want. So basically, there is your sunflower. Now we take the whole thing, of course, and we group the whole thing. So we group it. And if you want to see what it looks like on a color background, I'm going to just zoom out. And if we were to put it on a, remember, color background, where I have it on the white background, it's going to look a little more natural on a colored background. So you have something that looks like that. So you can see that here, it's darker, but it definitely has brightened up on the darker background. So there you have a sunflower. Okay, so this video is done, and what we're going to do now with the next video is we're going to create our profile views, and we're going to create the buds, and we're going to create the leaves and the stem. So this one actually went longer than I expected, but this is the basics, and when we do the next video, we have all the pieces we need to create the profiles and the buds. It'll be done much quicker. Okay, so we hope to catch you on part 2 of creating sunflowers in a vase.